Plains Indian Women by Marie Shirley-Jones. This endeavor was to learn about these fascinating women in our history. Through the project, I gained tremendous respect and awe for these resourceful and hardworking women. Being a fiber artist, I was most comfortable expressing what I learned in this medium. This piece is 5 by 15 feet. I made it after studying and being inspired by 2 pieces of ledger art from 1883 by an artist named New Bear on the Crow Reservation. After redrawing New Bear's art, I realized in order to really learn about these women, I would have to go big. I use found and new objects, none of which have any historical value. The faces and hands are made from plaster strips draped over a face mold and my own hands. The skirts are where I display all the fascinating things I learned about their lives. Between 1879 and 1897, Indian men on the reservations created ledger art when an Indian agent, a white man, would give them pages torn out of a used ledger book to draw on. These were usually battle and vision scenes, but New Bear's art of women at a dance really caught my attention. After seeing New Bear's images online, I made an appointment with Montana State University Billings to view New Bear's originals in their archives. The entire collection of 66 ledgers had been discovered in a storage unit in Roundup, Montana in 1930. I redrew New Bear's images on some ledger paper I had and became aware of every little line and mark, but I still couldn't understand if the women had necklaces or if their braids were wrapped in cloth. I didn't understand why some had vermilion cheeks and vermilion where their hair was parted. The back view of the women didn't show braids either. Actually, they didn't appear to be the same women, as their clothes didn't match up with the front view. Today, historic ledger art is a highly sought-after collector's item, and now many contemporary Native men are creating exquisite pieces in their new styles. Most of my information came from Pretty Shield, a book by Frank B. Linderman. Pretty Shield talked about spirit helpers and how chickadees were considered to be big medicine. I carved lino blocks to print the chickadees in the background. I learned that the vermilion on some faces reveals that they are of childbearing age. On the far ends of the background, I've written with Sharpies the names of real women. I find their names so intriguing. For a few years, as I read sources of information, I would keep a notebook handy to jot down names as I found them. Men's names were easy to come by, but the names of women weren't so prevalent. The words between the women are all words in the Crow language pertaining to women and the home. I got the words from a Crow dictionary online. To assure that the women didn't all look alike, I padded the face mold with cotton balls in different ways for each one before covering it with the wet plaster strips. The waistbands are made of parts from an old checkbook cover, old clothes, and belts. On the first skirt, I've drawn a lodge, which the women were responsible for. They prepared the hides, sewed them together, put it up and took it down for every move, and transported it on a travoy. They didn't get to paint them, though. Only the men got to paint the lodges. Pretty Shield was a medicine woman and was very knowledgeable about medicinal plants. All of the women were so with edible plants. I thickened dye to paint the plants on the skirt. I dyed this vintage linen and then used a fabric marker to write on the feathers, listing many of the responsibilities the woman had in the family and tribe. A few not yet mentioned are caring for the ill and elderly, carrying on traditions, and mourning the dead. I took a class from Kevin Redstar on painting crow shields. I painted a turtle on mine, which symbolizes fertility, and added rain to make the plants grow. I took it off the canvas frame and put it on this skirt. The women were responsible for displaying the shield by the lodge and transporting it when traveling. Once again, I used thickened dye to illustrate a glimpse of the Crow creation story. In the story, Old Man Coyote directs two red-eyed ducks to collect mud, from which he creates the world and its inhabitants. This skirt shows a parfleche, which is a storage container made from deer hide. The women made these in all sizes and also got to decorate them. The women usually painted abstracted geographic features such as rivers and mountains. Once the men killed the bison, the women were very busy. Besides preparing the skin and meat, they made thread, needles, awls, spoons, bowls, water containers, and tools. They even used the skin around the heart by stuffing it with antelope hair for balls for the children. I made this cradle board from a yard sale moccasin and some other odds and ends. Once a child turned 6 months, the baby was secured in a cradle board. It could be hung from a branch while the mother was working and even from a horse when traveling. The women made their beautiful cradle boards. Creating art to learn is very fulfilling, as the physical process of creating increases understanding. The more I learned, the more respect I gained for these competent women in our history. I am proud to have this piece on display at the Roosevelt Center in Red Lodge, Montana, as a part of its permanent collection.